30th is 9:06. Welcome to the Spokane County Planning Commission. The public may participate in person or remotely by utilizing our web link and telephone conference link, *9 to raise hand, *6 to speak. Individuals are limited to 1 3-minute comment period for an item. Please keep your comments specific to the current agenda item. Chat is not supported. We now have a quorum. Good morning, Melissa. I'm glad you're here. It's foggy here, and yeah, there's a lot of congestion on the highways. Thanks for being here. First order of business, introduce ourselves. We'll start over to my right.
Melissa Whitstruck.
Clyde Haase.
Pete Rayner. Stephen Pohl. The first order of business is always members of the public may comment on any topic that is not, repeat, not on this agenda today. Is there anyone who'd like to make a comment to the commission? That would be the time to do so. Ms. McHugh, you said you wanted to talk on the West Plains, but the climate change. Is that what this is? Because we do have an impact statement. No. Okay, fine.
Well, the reason I wrote that is because what I'd like to do is, again, address the background documents that are the foundation of this planning process, and also my experience with attending 7 of these environmental alternative meetings. So if I may address those
You may,
background documents and the planning process, that's why I came this morning.
but we do have a limited time. We have a 3-minute time.
I've heeded that each time, or mostly, not
Good to have
following other much more lengthy presentations.
It's nice to have you.
It's nice to be here, and I'm glad that you're here to listen with open ears.
We are.
Yeah, I hope so. Julia McHugh, Palisades Neighborhood, West Plains. I am here not addressing directly the comprehensive plan, but rather the planning process. I attended the 7th of these meetings, and again, we were outnumbered by the consultants. We citizens were. So I have to say, and I've spoken to Mr. Chesney, that the notification of these meetings is not reaching your constituents. Baseline. Number 2, the critical areas ordinance was promised to us, in fact, just ahead of last week's meeting, and a link provided, and there's no draft critical area ordinance. It is a very outdated document, and these plans are being formulated with very old information, including the entire exclusion of the West Plains aquifer, the paleo channels, the serious contamination that's existed for years. So just so you know, you're working with old information, and therefore you are not clearly and truly informed. The next is the draft land capacity analysis is also an error. The rural capacity analysis includes something that goes on and on, just like the county assessors, about vacant lands. And I want you to reconfigure possibly your notion of what vacant means. The environmental services that are provided by what you see as vacant land, meaning fenced areas that cows and livestock graze, there is a great deal of environmental work going on there. It infiltrates stormwater. It even infiltrates contaminants to stormwater. It prevents flooding. It cools the environment. It provides oxygen, and also should be a strong consideration about the basis of this $800,000 climate grant that you've just been granted from Commerce. I fear how that money's going to be used. I just heard you all discussing that, and I think that you have a pre-formed idea of what that is or what it could do. And I'm here to tell you that it can do something other than what you think it might. Also, there's been a lot of talk, actually few comments about reuse of commercial space. If you want to really make a positive impact on climate, you want to really seriously consider the hundreds of thousands of vacant commercial space that exists within city limits, city of Spokane Valley, city of Spokane. If you can get rid of the city-county barrier, there are hundreds of places that could be used as housing, which is very clearly the focus of this comprehensive plan system process. It has yet really anything to do with environmental. The word environmental doesn't come up. The word climate change are rare. It gets a mention. Commercial reuse gets a mention. We understand it's very expensive to repurpose any kind of building. I've rebuilt my house. I know what it costs. I can imagine what it costs at the commercial level. I ask you to just think carefully and rethink. This is 20 years. There's going to be all new people. So you don't have to live with the consequences. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Oh, Logan's online. Welcome, Logan.
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
Thank you. Just yeah, I didn't actually have a comment. Just wanted to let you all know I was here. I have been here, but it's all good. Thank you.
Anyone else would like to address the commission that's not on this agenda? That would be the time. The hands that are raised. If not, let's move on. Scott, you have the floor. Comprehensive Plan 2046. Workshop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a fairly deliberate agenda today. You've seen quite a lot of this over the last year or so. Much of it is starting to come together using the EIS approach, and we'll talk about that as we go. We're going to go through that update summary quickly. We're going to talk about the alternatives and then the UGA impacts. What we're going to be asking of you is for guidance and direction. After this meeting, we will be summarizing what we've heard at the community meetings through the comments that we've received online, email, otherwise phone and otherwise. And then we will be directing our EIS team to start working on the draft EIS document, which we intend to publish mid-December, 1st of December to mid-December. But we're going to be asking you to think of the alternative 1 versus alternative 2 and give us your comments and thoughts about what pieces you like and don't like. And we will, like I said, we will use that information to guide our work going forward. In the update itself, the critical areas ordinance is underway. It is actually quite well defined at the moment, as being prepared for agency review. Once that is complete, we will have that up and posted for public comment as well. We've gone through the best available science and gap analysis part of that. The best available science, the document has been posted in advance. And then, that will be guiding an awful lot of our work as we move into this EIS process and ultimately the rest of the comprehensive plan. Along with some of these other elements, the open space and wildlife corridor mapping, we're going through an update of what was done before. As you might expect, not a lot is changing, but we're reinforcing what's there. And again, that is a tool that helps us guide where growth should not go. Some of these are exclusionary efforts for planning. Climate element itself is in a draft form. It was presented to you at your last meeting for comment. That is also being put together with our partners, and the partners, just is to be aware, when we started this, the city of Cheney and the county were talking about sharing that effort. And so we offered that partnership to all of the small towns. Most of them took us up on it. So we've got 9 partners where the county is essentially facilitating the work for all of the small towns that would otherwise be overwhelmed by trying to do this effort. And then the chapter revisions sounds really simple on the screen right there, but those are essentially the 15 chapters. Each one is a GMA element. Most of those have gone through their first policy audit, and we will be bringing those to you, much like we did the climate element last time. We're planning to do that on your second meeting of the month as we move into the next year. So we'll be doing this kind of work in our first meeting or our business meeting. And then those second meetings, we'll use that committee of the whole structure to be a little more informal, but be able to talk exclusively about each individual element as we move through. So the CAO is focused on more, but these 5 things are major parts of that. Yes, it is an older document. It was an older document in 2017, 2018. This is the work that's being done to guide planning for the 2026 document. And we just put up a couple of things here that we used with our community audience over the last couple of weeks. And they're good reminders in some cases and probably new knowledge in other cases. We talk about the Spokane Valley Wrathful Prairie Aquifer. Not everybody has seen a map of it or how extensive it is in here. It's one of the largest municipal, so to speak, aquifers in the United States. But as we've been pointing out, it's not infinite. It still needs protection. It needs to be cared for. As you can see, and 500,000 is a pretty low estimate these days of people that draw from that aquifer. What you can see on the screen, though, is that as you get into kind of close to the metro core of the city, the aquifer is for the most part north of I-90 and at or east of the river. And so on the western side, there's a different aquifer system. It's a 2-tier aquifer. It draws, and it's a larger piece that has substantial rock from almost the border down through the eastern part of the state. But it has 2 different basins in it that the West Plains systems draw from. And that inset on the left side also shows in blue the what are called the paleo channels that were left over from the Great Missoula floods of 20,000 years or more ago. And what those do, among other things, in the world of contamination is, well, what they are is they were scoured out by the ice dams or the ice, the water that came through, filled with aggregate. And so they do is they pass water very easily. They don't provide much resistance to it. So water that percolates into those can flow essentially to the north up toward the Spokane River. What that means for the contamination is once those areas are contaminated, that contamination moves very quickly, which makes it very hard to get around. It's the equivalent of what used to be called Superfund sites by the US EPA, but in a traditional Superfund site, which is mostly industrial chemicals, fuels, oils, greases, things like that. It was in one way simpler, or like Kendall Yards, railroad yards. You scoop up enough dirt till you hit clean dirt, you truck it away, incinerate it, and you fill it with new dirt and you're done. You can't do that with the PFAS approach because it moves. You cannot excavate it and clean it. So it's going to take a different approach to making that happen. And ultimately it'll take filtering for future use. And it's important to realize in a lot of the West Plains, the city of Spokane is the retail water provider. Essentially a north-south line that goes from the Four Lakes intersection up to Airway Heights. Airway Heights had its own water, it has its own water system, but it's contaminated. So they're now drawing through the intertie with the city. All of Airway Heights water is coming from the city of Spokane. And Fairchild has its own system that draws from the river. Medical Lake has its own system, but what's missing are the hundreds of people that are using water from wells. And that's, again, it's a planning function that we need to know, but it's also something that is outside of our purview to fix. The Air Force has taken some responsibility for providing filtering systems. That's an ongoing effort, but it's going to be a challenge for, they're called forever chemicals, unfortunately, for a reason. That's going to change how development is done on our west side. And this is a map from Dr. Chad Pritchard at Eastern, who's conducting a research project out here, has been now for a little while. And the dots on that map show the sampling wells that have been looked at over the last couple of years. The red line around it is kind of basically the study area, which you can see right under the legend is Medical Lake up to Airway Heights on the top, and then the river itself up into the right after the city of Spokane. So the EIS, as a reminder, is looking at three alternatives. One is called the no action alternative, which is if we do nothing to change the development regulations or the area in which we build, how can we accommodate 100,000 or more new residents in 20 years? The second, or alternate one, is can we accommodate 100,000 new people simply with development regulation changes? And to put it simply, that means higher densities in every zoning category. And the third is potentially a combination of those. Some amount of increased density that we're seeing from legislative pushes for the last several seasons of pushing cities and counties to increase density. City of Spokane is being very aggressive in doing that, but also recognizing that higher densities, while easier to work with and generally more typical of cities, they've never been an element of what we consider the urban growth area, because the urban growth areas are suburban by nature. They're on the fringes of the city. So alternative two looks at, can we keep our development density pattern the same in our suburban areas and find pockets of increased density to make that happen? And we've talked about how we've done it in the past. We're going to work on that a lot today. Here's where we've been in a short session since June, when we've started the formal EIS process, down to the last 4 meetings with the public that have been, again, spread around the metro core a little bit, north, south, east, and west. And what we're talking about for this process is what we're calling bookends, and that's the all infill model, or the expand your UGA model. And the point of calling them bookends is that gives us an edge on either side to say we're not going to go beyond that system, and anything that you recommend and ultimately the board recommends to us for study, if it's in between those bookends, then the study we're conducting right now will be valid. If the draft EIS comes back and the comments are that you and the board want to look at a alternative outside of what we had planned in those bookends, we have to go back and restudy that, so to speak, to bring it back into the planning system. So this is a way of organizing a very complex body of data into a more simple way of doing it. And the reason it's complicated, it doesn't bind the county, but it does provide guidance on doing that. And then that preferred alternative is what then falls into the rest of the comprehensive plan, all of the elements, including the major ones of land use and transportation. So here you can see simply, the two scenarios in a sense, and one would be to adopt alternative one. The other is to take some parts of the density increases in alternative one and add elements from alternative two that you find desirable. And alt one allows for this approach of how are we going to accommodate, some 18,000 at least housing units in those urban growth areas over the next 20-year period. There's still not a true final number on what we have to accommodate. We've made the observation with Commerce and others that these 10-year periodic updates really ought to be staggered between cities and counties, because we're all on the same schedule, and the two big cities are where we are, or even a little behind in their own EIS and study work. So we don't have true final numbers from them on how they're going to be planning for this. If we had those, then we would have a more definitive sense of this is the load that we have to carry. So we're making some assumptions. We're using, of course, the land capacity analyses that have been done. And we're trying to base that on what's our best guess at what growth we're going to be responsible for in suburban Spokane County. So we're going to go through some of these that reflect the Alt-1 process. And what I want you to focus on is the changes of capacity from do nothing to increased density. So here, there's projected growth in the area of about 11,000. There's about 5,000 capacity. So we've got this 6,000 deficit if we do nothing. But if we turn the crank and increase the density limits, we could potentially accommodate up to 4,000 more than the 11,000 out there. And that's all of these are mathematically possible. The question is that desirable public policy to increase densities to this limit? And the corresponding part to that policy question is, how will the market respond to this? And not the market, not just builders. How will people who want to move and live here respond to this if the only alternative we have for them is higher densities in urban areas? So the North Metro moves in a pretty dramatic direction. The West Plains, because there's still relatively small allocations of actual residential land, has a more of a balance to it. And we will talk about this in a new way as we move on a little bit. Moran Glenrose also flips from a deficit to a surplus. And again, this is, if you've seen the area when you drive, 57th and Palouse Highway, Freya, it's the southern part of Glenrose, it appears to be a fairly well built out neighborhood. So the increased densities here, add, like a 1,500 unit change to that. So it's like, where does that get accommodated? And then the valley also goes from a deficit to a surplus, more of a 5,000 unit difference. And this is both, and as you know, the Valley UGA has a single name, but it's scattered over these 10 or 12 polygons. So thoughts before we move on? This is kind of the data table of all of them. We only showed you, kind of the four major groups, but you can see how you move from a no action capacity to a deficit to back to a surplus in those capacities. So the bottom line, if you spread this out, we've got growth of 30,000 people. We've got room now for 25. If we increase the densities, we can accommodate the 30 plus another 17. And if we change those deficits in a different way, it changes those bottom line numbers. But that's a numerical summary of what increased density looks like. Thoughts, comments?
Scott, I've got a few, but my question that is real important to me is, I fully understand what you're referring to by the density allocations, but the cities within our county, which is what, 13, 14? 13. Are they participating in establishing their own guidelines, or are they going to rely on us to tell them what they're going to have? Or I'm just trying to understand the process.
It's a little bit of both. Each of the cities, towns is has completed its own version of a land capacity analysis. They did that on their own, based on allocations that were assigned to them by the county. The county making that assignment was not one of us picking those numbers and sending it to them. It came based on the population projections from the State Office of Financial Management, that we accepted their middle line for growth. And then that was broken out by them for the cities. And also on the housing side by what was called the HAPT tool that Commerce created, that we did not control the methodology for, but you put in the numbers for each of the cities and then it broke it down into the income band housing units that were necessary. So on paper, they received a number of an allocation from the county on population and housing. But they did their own analysis on what capacity they had to accommodate that.
Then the second part of my question from the first, and I'm being very pointed now when I go to say Airway Heights is establishing that they'll be receiving water from the city, yet the city is, have they given them a green light all the way through? Whatever they want to do on the capacity of water needed? I mean, I'm just trying to understand how the process works.
Well, it's a good question. I don't know the detailed answer to that. I do know that Airway Heights and the city of Spokane have signed essentially a permanent agreement to provide water in perpetuity. I would have assumed that would include some level of growth. But I don't know that number exactly.
Is there any science behind that agreement? In other words, does the city have the water and resources to deliver the water to Airway Heights to fulfill that obligation?
From what I understand, based on our water people here at the county, the city's water right is fairly significant and could probably handle double the growth of the city as it exists now. So, and well, water for the city is a net revenue generator. They charge a premium as they are allowed to. They're charged a premium to provide water outside of their city limit, out of their boundary. And Airway Heights is paying that premium. So
Does that same theory apply then to the sewer?
I don't believe so, but I don't know. Don't know. We know there's capacity in the Riverside treatment plant. The county, technically owns some share of that capacity, and we've used that number to judge on, as we get into UGA expansions, do we have sewer capacity for this possible expansion? And we can answer that positively. The other thing for sewer, specifically for the county residents, the county's existing treatment facility is close to its original capacity of 7 million gallons a day, give or take. But it was built to be modular. It can be increased in, I think, like 6 million gallon day elements on that land. They can build separate units to do that. So while there would be a capital cost, that would be wrapped into development, and that plant also has more capacity. I don't know, though, if the city of Spokane charges a premium for that. I don't know how they would, frankly. It's not metered, for example.
At our last meeting, you all said something that hit a light switch. That is that we have to plan for growth in the rural county.
Mhm.
And that was the first I'd heard that come up. And my question is that more complicated than C of E's? And how does the C of E process fit into the county? Because I've mentioned this before. We're eliminating our future. The ability to ever grow other than to grow internally. The C of E's. You look at the maps of, even in the EA, they're processing C of E's at an alarming rate. Where it made it, it's paying some of the county's bills. Process, but
It's not a planning process that we find particularly useful. However, we have very little control over it because that exemption. And for those that don't know what C is, a certificate of exemption from the subdivision rules that are set through the RCW and the WAC and then codified here at the county. It means you can create lots without going through a formal subdivision, a short plat process, notably. There are some restrictions to it. You have to be on a county maintained road. You can only do so many lots at a time. But it's a way of going around the subdivision process. It's designed, the only saving grace is you can't use a C of E to get below the minimum density standards of a zone. So in rural traditional, if you've got a standard of 1 dwelling unit per 10 acres, and you've got a 100-acre piece of land, you can use a CE to carve it into 10 parcels, but you can't use it to make it any more dense than that. but it reduces bigger parcels that could develop in more urban form to smaller parcels. In the urban reserve area, you can use it, which is also a 1 to 10 or 1 to 20 or 1 to 10. You can use it to create 5-acre lots as long as you cluster them in a pattern that anticipates future urban development. So the rest of it, if it comes into an urban growth area, can replicate that pattern. And so you preserve your ability to grow. So there were some tools included to make the C of E process a little more palatable, but it's still it's a problem in the way that it, as you said, you end up at best with a whole bunch of 10-acre lots surrounding your metro area. And it's hard to do urban planning if you have to reassemble 10-acre lots into a bigger piece. Essentially, it's very, very challenging. So,
One last question.
Mhm.
The cities within, and I'm not picking on Area Heights, I'm saying like city or the Spokane Valley, for example, they're gonna say, well, we need to have this many allocations. And they're coming to us because it has to fit into one program because it's administrated by the state. And we, the county, are being held liable for whatever those total figures. Am I correct on that?
if you're referring to the urban
allocation.
growth area,
Right.
yes. Yeah, the cities and the city of the valley has at least informally told us that they believe they do not have the capacity to meet their housing allocation based on the HAPT tool, and they are requesting UGA expansion. That's not technically how it works, but the bottom line is the cities don't get to pick the UGAs, the county does. And
Thank
so
you.
the cities can say, this is what we want. And the county, you're not giving it to us, but if the county gives them something that is ultimately not compliant, it's the county board that is held out of compliance, not the cities. Moving on. Here's, as we lead into alt 2 a little bit, we've looked at some of the areas that are in the urban growth area and said, where can we use this neighborhood zoning that we've been talking about potentially being used? And if you recall, the neighborhood zoning allows for blended zoning. It allows for everything from a single family detached to, limited multifamily with townhomes, triplexes, things, middle housing in between in a by right zone as opposed to LDR, MDR, HDR. It also allows for limited commercial in the neighborhood residential zone. It allows for limited commercial uses. It could be shops, they could be small offices. In the neighborhood commercial, it kind of flips that. It's designed to be in a more commercial area, but to allow some higher density residential to be in that same area, again, for walkability, for reducing vehicle trips. So we've outlined a few areas that are potential candidates for that neighborhood zone within the UGA, because up till now, we've contemplated that neighborhood zone being used to plan and build lands outside of the UGA, as we said, to use them to try to build small villages or neighborhoods out there rather than just subdivisions. There are some areas that are possible candidates within the city or within the UGA. This is North Metro. The area, oh goodness, doesn't really work very well up here. Division Street is the north-south one on the left side, Newport Highway going off on the right side of the screen. In the at Newport and Hawthorne is essentially on the northeast quadrant is Rockwood Retirement. On the west side is essentially Whitworth University, and commercial areas in between leading up to Hawthorne moving out into the metro corridor. You can already see a mix of zoning in here from low density residential to commercial and mixed uses. And so the idea of neighborhood zoning would erase those lines and allow for a blend of those uses with overlays of design and development standard, but that could also allow off-access transportation. You could have trails connecting different things within a project. You could plan them in a different way where you didn't have an artificial border in between. we're not saying we have a master plan for this. We're saying the pattern out here suggests that it might provide some flexibility and direction for future growth.
Am I not seeing the north-south corridor coming through that spot?
No, it would be over here to the right.
Okay,
Quite
that's
a
what
way.
I was looking.
That's along the left side is North Division, and it connects to 395 up on the north side of this. So here's a little bit north of that. Again, Division and Hastings. Same kind of mix of uses, and you can see this neighborhood zoning stretching up into what we've called that Hastings Farwell corridor. In the last 4 years that I've been with you, you have processed a handful of comprehensive plan amendments in this area to move from lower density residential to medium and higher density residential. So there's a clear trend that this is an area that is supporting a more dense residential pattern. You heard from STA a while back that this corridor is being studied for high capacity transit, and we picked a node in this area to do that. So it's going to have other services. So we think, again, this is a chance of being able to lay out a plan and a regulatory system in advance that gives everybody a chance to see what the development world or what that growth might look like going forward, but also plan for it in a more connected, deliberate way than block by block change of comprehensive plan amendments.
Do financial incentives like TIF and GFC waivers, those kinds of things, do they come into our purview at all, or is that how do we incentivize, or can we?
The county has been fairly aggressive in using tax increment financing, or at least agreeing to participate in tax increment financing. Notably here at the Meadworks project, it'll be the closest one that has a development agreement. So it's a tool that can be used to add public improvement value to projects, and then that public improvement value is paid back by the increased property taxes that come out of the new development. So it's a valuable tool. And so the use of the TIF as an agreement generally would not come through the planning commission. It becomes a development agreement between the board and the developer. But the anticipation of a master plan development that we, in the regulatory world, the carrots and sticks part of it. If you want this kind of density, you need to provide better trail access, or you need to provide better open space. It's analogous to the planned unit development layering that we have and most cities have, but it puts it as a base zone instead of an overlay. That's what we would put in the regulatory system. And then the developer might say, I can do that, but what I need is another, $1 million for these public improvements that you're asking me for. Can we use a tax increment district to cover those public improvements and then pay it back over time? And that would be a decision that we would make recommendations on with the board directly. So here's the other part of that Hastings Farwell corridor coming down to right across the street from Costco. And then what you can see in the lower left corner of the upper right screen on the screen is a piece of land that Department of Transportation has. It's at the moment it's leftover surplus right of way, and they are interested in finding a master developer to do a mixed use project on that site. To the northeast of Costco, Multicare bought that property now a year or so ago and sold 10 acres at 40 acres and sold 10 acres to Shriners Hospital. So that is going to be a major medical center of some kind in the next probably 10 or 20 years. Our very early conversations with their CEO suggest that they'd like to see something coming out of the ground there by 2030 or 2031. So it's not a long-term play. It's going to be a shorter-term impact. So again, suggesting an employment center, a destination, very different than, green space used to run, water off of an aluminum smelter, 40 years ago. But that is going to be coming in as a higher density operation. And so we think this neighborhood zoning has some real flexibility to work here. And then out on the West Plains, and here's, there's 3 of these sites on the West Plains that we think are promising candidates, because in one case, they knit together some of the prior comp plan amendments that went out there to put housing here, housing here, housing here, with light industrial still scattered along in the middle of it. And reflecting the fact that a lot of the industrial or non-residential uses on I-90 or on the corridor are really directed on the north side of the freeway, to be sure. But those on the south side want to be in better access. They want some of the frontage, and they want to be around intersections so they can get vehicles in and out. So that previous pattern of light industrial extending a mile deep or a mile off the highway is probably not really viable for business. And as the residential has wound its way through there, here's a way to plan for that in a more meaningful way, very much in the spirit of a neighborhood, because these were platted just as residential parcels. There was almost nothing. Well, there's nothing out there. The closest grocery stores in Airway Heights or Rose Hours downtown. There's only recently been plans for a county park at the far southern edge of this. This is a kind of zoning that can help turn this into a set of small places and villages. And that light industrial area on the left side, lower left side of the hatched part, is for most part the area comprised from CPA 2202, which was the proposed mixed use project, 108, 110 acres, that was ultimately deferred because of extensive mitigation being requested by DOT. Well, if we plan for it now in this mixed use neighborhood, then those mitigations can be spread around to cover bigger impacts than just that site. And so it brings back the opportunity of, the live work environment out here. This is a little bit further to the southwest. You have processed amendments in here too, especially in that lower portion. And while this doesn't show the platting pattern, that bigger area of light industrial on the right side is pretty much the Aspen Park subdivision. And a lot of that has already, you kind of see the street patterns in there, has already been platted for residential. As a reminder, that was done between 2005 and 2007 when residential was allowed in light industrial areas before the county reversed course and prohibited it. So in some cases, we're cleaning up the map, but in connecting this as a neighborhood, we're also suggesting that, again, small markets and things that could serve a bigger area would have some confidence in planning to come out here, because now there's some certainty of what's going to develop, not the uncertainty of, well, it says light industrial, but can I get residential out here? So again, it's more meaningful.
A
Yes.
question, I know the flight pattern and of course the airport. I haven't heard too much about that. Are they involved in the next 20 year, or I don't know what's going on there?
The former director was very involved up front, and that we're still at that level. Much of this area along I-90 is covered under ACZ 5, which is a very broad, it's not a safety zone, it's a noise zone. It's an area in which, if you're building property, you must include a navigation easement in that property that says you acknowledge you're in the vicinity of an airport and there's going to be noise, and you have to build your structure to a what's called an LDN, or a noise level of 65, average of 65 decibels. So it requires you to build homes with more insulation, but it's not under a flight path. And we, the county, have reflected development in the area as being south of I-90 is where we want to focus our residential rather than north, because when you do move north, you move closer to those runways. And then finally, this southern area. And here's where, there's also the caveat. You can do neighborhood zoning in here, but this is where some of the stormwater management is absolutely at its worst. This is where the West Terraces flooding has taken place. The golf course is there. Before we got here, the western side of that, or the western 9 holes, had already been started to be converted into multifamily and high density projects. So having a neighborhood zone gives us a chance to look at the overall impacts and figure out how to handle stormwater management before it becomes an afterthought in a plat. It doesn't mean it'll actually happen, but it gives a chance to acknowledge that upfront. And that's the challenge that happened out there before. For whatever reason, homes were built without a full understanding of how that stormwater system was going to work. And that's why people still have flooded basements and flooded streets when it rains. If this concept is to work, it has to go hat in hand with understanding the environmental limitations that are out here. And it could get to the point, frankly, where you could have the best design in the world, but the stormwater system is going to add $10 million to making that happen, and it just can't happen.
Wasn't that, again, I'm sorry for all these questions, but wasn't there something with the Cheney School District? Is that still part of that?
No,
That's,
Cheney, well, Cheney is not planning on any schools in these areas. We have worked with Cheney schools, and there was one multifamily project that was recommended here in 2023, I believe, as we built a better relationship with Cheney schools, they, instead of just being silent and saying, we'll figure it out when it happens in the next 10 years, they actually said, we don't have the capacity for this kind of multifamily project. And we took it off the table. So we gave them almost a veto to say, if you can't handle it, then we're not going to permit it. So in a sense, it's an analogy to what happens on the environmental side. If you can't make this work effectively in environmental and critical impacts, it can't happen. That said, Cheney, and we'll show you another map in a minute, Cheney has a handshake agreement on a piece of land that is north of Highway 2. And so they're looking at building 2 new schools in an area that could come into the urban growth area.
Are we gonna end up as part of the Growth Management Act process approving these neighborhood zones? Is that something that it's gonna come before us?
Yes,
And so it's gonna be a step between now and the end of 2027 or whenever we get to the end of.
which we had till 27. We only have to 26.
I didn't know that, but I'm assuming we're not gonna be done. But,
We're going to be done.
oh,
I mean, put it this way, don't ever let, perfect be the enemy of good. We're going to create a solid GMA compliant comprehensive plan for 2046 for your consideration and recommendation to the board. Right now, we've got those public hearings teed up for September of 26. They're already on your calendar. Are we going to get everything that we're talking about in a vision? No, because some of what we're talking about is pushing that GMA envelope probably further than groups like FutureWise or others may be comfortable with right now. And so we want to stay within the compliance envelope. But we're going to start having those conversations on, this is what we want to do. How do we get there? And some of it's going to involve legislative assistance.
it looks like it's a catch-22 in some ways. We gotta figure out how to avoid.
Exactly. We're going to push the envelope that serves Spokane County's needs, but we're going to only go as far as we can within the bounds of the Growth Management Act.
I understand that there's some resistance to increasing densities outside where people are used to seeing it. Maybe some of the small towns are particularly like, how would, we don't want to see it. 2, how would we even afford it? I think that there needs to be some stronger policy work behind development paying its way. And I understand what you're saying about tax equivalent financing and other financial instruments. And I've worked on them. But there's only so many tax increment finance districts that a jurisdiction can afford, because you're foregoing the taxes and hoping like hell the development happens so that it'll come back in some reasonable time frame. So I think that needs to be really laid out. I get it. $10 million for a stormwater system out there on the West Plains. Who can add that to their development scenario? Nor does it make sense for it to be absorbed by all the rest of the taxpayers in the jurisdiction. So I just would like to caution that there needs to be stronger policy statements around that. And then when we do get to development regulations afterwards, after the comp plan is adopted, that it's really laid out very well and it is enforced, which is always the key. Thank you.
Melissa, we totally agree. The TIF tool in Washington is useful, but it's nothing like it is used in other states where it captures more revenue, chiefly because school districts don't participate. And in other places they do. And as we all know, when we pay our property tax bill, the schools take 70% of it. Yes, it's a foregoing of revenues. If TIF is used well, you have development agreements in place. You don't put it in place, pound a sign in the dirt and say, here, well, let's hope something good happens. You've got that development in place before you make the commitment to do it.
TIF is, Washington's called TIF light.
It should be. Yeah,
Good reason.
it should be. Another thing that's out of our control, and it's not affecting us, it affects the entire state, is the challenge of the condominium laws that exist on the state books. The liability trail that follows building that system when it's been turned over to the association and all of the owners, 10 years later, there's a roof leak and the original builder is still held liable. That's why nobody's building it. They're not going to take that liability on their books. If that was changed in some way, then we could have a really meaningful dialogue with our friends across the river about now let's get a downtown residential strategy going. Because there's so much room down there for high-rise living. Larry Stone, he's taken it on himself to build a 12-story condo, and nobody here's seen that probably in a long time. Probably since the flour mill project happened years ago. So it's something that we'd like to see, because having a vibrant residential downtown is much better for Spokane County than having that not be able to do that and everybody else having to filter out into the neighborhoods. If we don't have that downtown element of residential, we're missing a big part of what a metro core should have. So moving on, if we're choosing that, what we want to do is look at, should we incorporate some of this neighborhood zoning as part of studying this rather than just increasing densities in LDR, MDR, HDR? And then where does that leave us for what should be happening on the edges? And you'll see there's a note in here. The reason the EIS process has to narrow this down is it's expensive. We can't study all 50 clusters of UGA pockets around the area. Transportation modeling alone is very extensive. It takes a long time. And if you're doing it for everything, you're wasting 90% of your effort, because you do it for the whole thing and then only these two pods ultimately come in and you've done analysis on roads that you're never going to need. So part of this is just being frugal with taxpayer dollars, is how do we study the things that are most likely to happen and the things we most want to see happen in the county. So we're going to show you the last few slides on some pockets of possible consideration for urban growth expansion. This is the second edition of a map. The first edition looked very directly individually at parcels based on the statutory criteria and the 7 criteria created locally that were, do you touch the UGA now? Do you have availability of sewer? Do you have transportation? Not transportation concurrency, but are you near an arterial as a starting point? And then the last one of the criteria was, is it available to develop if it's in fact included in the UGA? And to that end, a number of property owners and their agents had sent us letters of interest saying, if we're considered to go in, we will be ready to go. And what you'll see on the map is several parts of that. First off, the bold outlines around parcels come from those that have submitted letters of interest and saying we're ready to go if we're included. The yellow parcels meet 3 or 4 of the criteria. The green parcels meet 5, 6, or 7. So in a way, the green parcels meet more of the prescribed criteria for inclusion than the others. The darker ones meet them all. This is the northwest side, 5 Mile Prairie is right in the smack middle of that. Yeah. And the other striking thing about this is they're scattered. They're all over the map. And some of that is an analysis that we're looking for, your guidance today. Do we focus on areas that are bigger? For example, those 2 squares in the northwest corner of 5 Mile Prairie. To the immediate west of those are 2 plats that will be in the UGA because they're coming in as part of the result of the settlement agreement in 2015. They're not marked here because they're not in yet. So they will be touching the UGA, and that's 80 acres of land on a flat prairie. Is that a good candidate for development? The larger parcels up north outside of the city limit, the Avista corridor goes through the top of that. That's better than 500 acres. So if you wanted to think of an area that could absorb growth using a neighborhood or mixed use project, you could create a whole village out there. And that could lend 3,000 homes, 3,000 dwelling units all by itself. So there are a few places that have that kind of capacity, but there's a lot of the small parcels, kind of back to Pete, what you mentioned, those remnant parcels of 10 acres, 20 acres, that could be, in a sense, infill projects, even though they could be on urban growth area. On the West Plains, again, in the northwest corner of this, you can see parcels outlined in fuchsia. Those are candidate parcels requested for inclusion by a city, in this case, Airway Heights. What they're proposing in a sense is to swap out some of the UGA lands they have on their north side and move them to their west side where they feel they've got a better chance of controlling growth. That swap, while it is in the JLU's influence area, the Air Force has generally signed off on that approach. So they've checked that box. West Plains, if you see some of those, you might envision those neighborhood overlays would incorporate some of that and be able to plan it in a more efficient way. And recognize, I should tell you, I guess, but this UGA analysis is based on housing. This is based on the residential side. There is a parallel process going on non-residential lands that might be included in the UGA. We're being very careful with that because that was the chief accusation, upheld in 2015, is that the county drew its UGA too large by 2,000 or 3,000 acres of light industrial land that the county wouldn't absorb for 75 or 80 years instead of 20 years. And so we'll be cautious, but also making sure we've got room to grow. Some of that will ultimately probably show up in that West Plains area between the Four Lakes interchange and Four Lakes itself. In the upper center of that is the project I mentioned before. It's affected by the JLU's contours on the southern part, which is why it doesn't show up as green. But it's potentially planned as a mixed-use project that would include 2 Cheney schools that are outside of the Air Force influence area. So there's another factor to consider in where you make recommendations on where things can go as well. If we include this parcel, we might be able to give the school district a huge advantage in putting facilities where the growing population is. And you may know, but Cheney is one of the largest geographic school districts in the state. It's got a huge amount of area, but it has very few facilities north of the highway. Over southeast of city of Spokane, the Moran Prairie, Glenrose area. You can see in the Glenrose side, there's many interested property owners touching the UGA possibility. On the south side, right in the corner, Palouse Highway comes out. Those are possibilities. And then we included it in this because it's closer. That far southwest cluster of parcels is west of 195. So it's not really in the Moran Prairie area, but it's a requested set of parcels that meet criteria and would provide another mixed use project that we've seen come.
Is that as far south as, I think it's Washington Road? Out there by Hangman, the Hangman Valley is on the
Well, you can
east side.
you can see where Hatch comes down on the curve there.
Yeah,
So and this that
okay.
The greens meet the most of the criteria outlined. They generally meet 5, 6, or 7 of the local criteria. The yellows meet 3 and 4 of the criteria. And when they're clustered together, what we said before, we're considering clusters, not parcels. We're showing parcel lines here. But we would consider that group as a single cluster.
If the target area is the leading horse, so to speak, can we expand it
Of course.
by other applicants as we go through this process?
Well, not by applicants per se. Landowners are not legally allowed to apply to be in the urban growth area. That is a technical decision made by county planning, county boards based on capital facilities and all of the other elements that show you can afford it with this kind of development. The fundamental purpose of GMA was its stated goal to prevent sprawl. And that was defined as low density development supported by expensive capital facilities that places generally didn't have enough money to maintain over the life of the facility. Now, oddly enough, there's no actual definition of sprawl in the GMA, so take that for what it's worth. But the idea is to better align the capital and budget of growth with the growth itself.
Yeah, need to rephrase my question. Property owner A doesn't apply. I understood we started by taking people who were interested in coming in. Somebody we're not prohibited from, to pick a spot someplace.
No, not at all.
Okay.
And that's the point of having this full analysis. It could be that when you do that next level of more detailed analysis on true transportation consistency, some of those green parcels without bold lines could be very highly eligible.
Yeah.
The interest letters serve as the last criteria. Everything else being equal, we would go for someone that's ready to move rather than someone that's not. Because the point of adding land to the UGA is because you can defend if you need it.
One question I was asked by a landowner was, they're adjacent to the city. They don't want to become part of the city. Do they have to be? How does a landowner
The
get?
county has no ability to force an annexation. It's entirely between, and the way annexations are supposed to work is the property owners are supposed to petition the city for annexation. Cities are not supposed to reach out and grab them, but sometimes it works the other way around, particularly if a city wants to go out and grab a big commercial area for its tax base and leave the entire residential area alone.
Well, I know some of the
Happens
landowners
here.
don't want to be annexed.
Right.
And
None of that is forced. You want to take a break?
Scott, in the wisdom of the chair, we'd like to take a 5-minute break. Can we do that?
Fine.
All right, so we're Thank you. Mr. Chesney, would you please will you please continue?
Yes, sir. We have one more area to consider. Not quite ready yet.
Logan? Yes, okay, good. Want to make sure we didn't leave them out. Okay, good.
Can you just advance the slide for now? Oh, there we go. Here's the scattered valley UGA pattern. You can see again, a number of property owners and the ones on the far left are also in that Glen Rose column. On the north side, that cluster on the northwest side of this map is Argonne Road going out to Bigelow Gulch Road. We know we can forecast, outside of a UGA horizon, the completion of Bigelow Gulch Road now as a major east-west arterial is going to drive development pressure north of the valley because it'll be an easy way to move around. Just as the North Spokane corridor, as we talked earlier, is going to drive development in that North Metro and Deer Park. All of those are going to have secondary impacts of these transportation projects. So that in a way that makes that area more ripe for development. And as you can see, a number of those parcels are in the green category, so they're scoring particularly well. Further to the east, north of Trent, is a legacy subdivision that started in 1993. Developers are interested in moving that forward, which is why it's heavy outline. It also scores generally pretty well. To a little bit to the southeast of that is rural traditional or urban reserve project or parcels that are looking for some inclusion. The city of Spokane Valley has hinted that they're interested in this area for non-residential development, but they have not explicitly said so. And so we're kind of reading the tea leaves in that direction. Moving around, you can see again, smaller parcels, not far from the Salties uplands. There's a cluster of 2 parcels for development to the west of that, and then smaller parcels as they go around. This is a different kind of development challenge than some of the others you've seen because there are fewer big parcels. If these are included, they're likely going to be developed at that LDR density, not as a neighborhood. There just isn't enough mass there to make that happen. So we're looking at these in a different light. And then to wrap up our updated calendar, we're in Q4. We're looking to get, like I said, some comments, direction, guidance from you today. We are meeting with the board in December to reinforce that. And we will be publishing this DEIS for public comment in the near future. That document will be the much more detailed version of, 25 slides. Environmental impact statements are in planning. We refer to it as value by the pound. It's like, how heavy is this document? How thick does it get? And so they're very extensively researched and put together for public comment. So there'll be a 45-day comment period. We will come back, take all of those comments, bring them back to you with our response to those comments. And then we will create that into a final EIS that will go through that same cycle for final comments. And that will drive much of what happens in the remaining elements of the comp plan update between, say, March of 26 through July, when we hope to have the vast majority of our work in what I would call final draft form. And then we will be talking about how is the whole bigger than the sum of the parts? Because until then, we're looking at all these individual elements. Then we have to pull the whole thing together. So hinted at before, if we stay on schedule, we will be headed for public hearings on the comp plan in September, probably 2 separate public hearings. And then your recommendation will go to the board, and we're asking for their we're anticipating probably a two-part briefing with them and then a third for consideration in early December. So we're a little more than a year, kind of 14 months from our finish line. But all of these things are going to start happening very quickly.
Scott, it's your expectation that will be totally complete by the end of 2026?
We have to be complete by the end of 2026 to stay in compliance.
That's the end of my term, so that's why I'm asking that very relevant
Yes.
question.
Yes, we were-
about this.
We and the other 11, 10 counties that are planning in the 2026 horizon were granted a 6-month extension from July 1st or June 30th up to December 31st. The 24 and the 25 groups were granted that. We asked for it for the same reasons. We had anticipated at the county that we would be substantially done with the plan still by July 1st and then be able to use those remaining months to put the development regs in place, at least the very basic ones that would drive the implementation of the plan. And that's what we're still going to be doing. As I mentioned before, there's no way to anticipate, even though some of this neighborhood work has been done in other places, we've got model codes to look at. We don't have to make it up out of whole cloth. You're never going to anticipate every possible contingency. You don't in our current code. So we get an adopted plan in place that gets us, here's the vision, here's the roadmap, here's the rules to get there. And then we start testing it in 27 and we refine that 27, 28, work with the legislature to get some improvements on what we're doing, with the goal that between the adoption of the plan and the 5-year window that we've got, we're under obligation to come back in 2031 and say, how's it going? And that was a really positive change in the law by going to the 10-year update window and having a 5-year interim. It's a really good timeline for comprehensive planning. So that part's working well, but yes, December, we have to be done.
Thank you.
So we are open to any questions and comments from you or the public.
I want to hear from Eric Lowe because he was kind enough to fill out
course.
a yellow stuff here and he would like to speak. I assume you still want to speak. Okay. I'll start the clock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks
And
for being here.
I'm happy to be here. I want to thank you, Scott and his team. I attended the Center Place and Moran Prairie sessions that they conducted. Scott did an excellent job of answering every question that was posed to him. They ran the gamut of different questions and comments. I want to speak to the Cougar Cliffs development proposal that I've presented to you previously in the Latah Valley. It's 106, just to reiterate, it's 166 acres, about 17 acres are currently within the city. And the remainder is currently zoned urban reserve. There were questions about where it is located on the map, and I just want to clarify, we're directly across from that hatch opening out onto 195. The southern border of our property is White Road, if you're familiar with that road. We are very close to downtown. Our goal is to, in creating a mixed-use development, is to provide goods and services to the entirety of the Latah Valley as well as South Spokane County, so they don't have to go all the way up to 57th or 29th, as well as, into downtown for some services. One of the concerns or questions that was raised previously was our proximity to sewer. Based on city GIS, it looked like we were about 36 meters, and the cutoff that had been established previously was 30 meters. So we've initiated a sewer survey, or I've had our engineers initiate a sewer survey to find out exactly where that stub is, as well as to figure out exactly where our stub or where our neighbor's development will have sewer, because there's a city development that's in the planning process initiated by our neighbor. And then I was just sort of taking notes here as Scott was talking, and one thing that I wanted to mention was there were concerns about school capacity up on the West Plains. Together Spokane, one of the proposals that the school district has, they own a large parcel close to Qualtran or close to the Yokes down there in the valley. And if Together Spokane is approved, they plan on building a new school in the Latah Valley. So something else for you guys to consider, but I just wanted to sort of reiterate that we are ready and willing to move forward. We just are sort of in a holding pattern now. So thank you very much.
With more comments, Scott, you've done a wonderful job capsulizing all of this. I'd like to thank you for this incredible granular detail of all these tiny little parcels all over our county. Whoever did that had a lot of work to do. So thank you very much for that.
The team is sitting right in the back row
I see them back there.
there. They
Thank you.
do, they have done excellent work
Yeah.
to push this analysis together.
Okay, Commissioner. Now's the time to start.
Mr. Chesney, I just was wondering, and maybe I've missed it because as I was explaining earlier, I had my first bout with COVID at the beginning of this month. So I was a little bit out of commission there. When will we get maybe some form of information or input to the planning commission from Public Works or specifically capital facilities on whichever EIS draft goes forward?
Good question. The Public Works staff is working right now on what I would call a 50,000-foot view of the transportation modeling analysis. We won't be doing that in-house. We don't have that capability in-house. So we'll be using our consulting team for that in sort of cooperation with SRTC. First off, they do modeling of their own, so they know what's going on, and they will ultimately have to certify what we do. So we'd rather have them at the table first than later. We've also been in consultation with Lewis Graff and the wastewater team to do it as Eric mentioned. The original parcel by parcel analysis did have a 30-meter number. It's like, well, if you're within 30-meter, we're going to consider that you can connect to the sewer. The challenge with that is on our maps, it's again a huge estimate to look at every parcel and see how close you are. Is it really 30 meters? Is it 36? Is it 38? And the nearest sewer indicated on a GIS map might simply be a local lateral into a neighborhood that it doesn't have capacity in and of itself. So we backed off on that for this first round to make it more inclusive, to provide more choice for you and the board, and we asked Lewis, so if we're going to grow by 100,000 and let's say 60 of that, twice what we're anticipating somehow ends up in the unincorporated areas, do we have the capacity to handle it in the treatment facilities? And between the county's treatment facility, the capacity we own at Riverside and Liberty Lake Sewer and Water on the east side, the answer was yes, we can handle the capacity. So we took the sewer parameter off in the second round map. It will come back on as we get closer to, again, it might be these 2 or 3 polygons or groups that are good candidates for some growth, and then they will go through the full capital facilities analysis.
Okay, so that's good. I'm looking forward to that. But
You may be one of the very few people that would be looking forward to a CFP analysis. 8-inch pipe, 6-inch pipe.
yeah. Where is it? How many meters off are we? I'm hate harping on this joint planning thing, but where's the city at in saying, okay, so we're planning for X amount too, and we may use up more of our wastewater treatment plant capacity than we had planned on. But I'm assuming, and I could be wrong, that's not the county's problem. The city will have to figure that out.
Since we both have, I don't know if we actually own capacity or if we're leasing capacity. I don't know the details. It's portrayed as an ownership, that we bought some amount of capacity. But that's why we asked Lewis upstairs that 60,000 number instead of a 30,000 number, because that would include what the city of Spokane would be normally anticipating for its growth. While they say they can accommodate 66,000, that's not in the forecast for the 20-year horizon. So we've, in a way, we kind of asked a back of the napkin question to gauge that capacity for both us and the city. That said, Spencer and I have had many productive conversations about planning, notably West Plains, because they play the role of water provider as well as everything else. And we've talked about joint planning again, but we've laid out a caveat, and we did this from the beginning. If we're going to do joint planning, which to the city means the county is planning for development using essentially city's municipal standards for roads, for setbacks, for other things.
Mhm.
If we're going to do that, we need a date certain annexation program from the city. That at some point you will agree to take these costs on, because the county budget is not set up to serve a fully urbanized area. Back to development impact fees or something, we don't use them. So, our county road section, in urban areas does involve curb and gutter, but normally it's swales and ditches and pavement. If we improve it to a different degree, we don't have the tax base built in to maintain that over time. So the idea is we'll talk to you about joint planning if you come forward with an annexation program that says, we know on a date certain that this is going to be yours. That has not gotten any traction in City Hall. And so our joint planning is going to be more informal. You probably remember in 2009, there was a joint planning guide that was produced by everybody through PTAC, the planning group. Still exists. It's full of good ideas. The city, in wanting to use that to fall back on that and say, well, we talked about the scope of this. Let's just go back to this document. Then this is a very formal approach. We need intergovernmental agreements. We need to know who's responsible. We need to know if you've got a budget set up to do this kind of planning. And our version of joint planning doesn't account for that. It's like, we're all planners, roll up your sleeves, come to the studio, throw some paper on the maps, and let's talk about these areas. We're doing that. We're doing that second part. We had an entire group of West Plains planners in our studio a week ago. City was there, Airway Heights, Medical Lake, Cheney, and us. And that's talking about the greater West Plains beyond just this comprehensive plan. It's like, as others have noted, we look at the West Plains in a fairly compartmentalized way. It's our UGA, and it's bordered by the airports and this. Well, it's a much bigger area. And having all of those municipalities sit down and say, what's important to you? What's important to Airway Heights on your periphery that we're not watching? And Cheney as well. They're often left out of the planning conversation because they're just kind of off the map. And yet, we run transit service. It's a major university. It's an urban center in its own right. So we've convened that group, and we're going to do that quarterly and just keep talking about essentially a sub area plan in that 5-year 2026 to 2031 horizon. So there's some progress on the actual details of it, though, until we move the city a little closer to taking on these urban areas somewhere in the future. We have to plan for them as if we're going to administer them in perpetuity.
I know that question about developing two city standards in the county has been a real bear for as long as I've been a planner, so 25 years, at least.
It was there when I was in a different chair on the other side of the river. I'm sorry, I didn't see it.
Yeah, did you ask, did I get on board or not?
Morning, Paul.
I just want to join Melissa in in the interest, maybe it's just the two of us, in capital facilities planning for the update. So I just wanted to put that in the record. Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could for a minute, I certainly didn't mean to make light of it, only that it's something that, planning nerds and policy analysts tend to look at. It is critically important to the planning staff that we do, accurate capital facilities planning. You probably remember that was one of the main things that got us out of compliance in 2015 and 16, is we didn't have a capital facilities plan tied to our comprehensive plan, and yet we were doing amendments without assessing the impacts on our sewer and water. We fixed that. We brought the CFP into compliance in 23 as an adopted document, and now it is tied to the comprehensive plan, where the various departments that have capital improvement programs, or CIPs, are producing those now. Those come to us. We update the CFP elements of those. Not every capital expense has to be in here, but those that are tied to goals and policies that are in the comprehensive plan must be here, must be there. As long as we keep those documents together, we will stay in compliance. But it is, outside of the GIS elements itself, the CFP is the single most important link to the comprehensive plan that we have with our colleagues in county government. And we're very serious about keeping that accurate and up to date.
Do you want to go? I had a couple questions, Scott. Number one, this goes back an hour ago. I should ask it. How deep is the aquifer, the secondary one at Airway Heights, in depth? About. I know at one time I did know that one, but I don't know.
I don't know. We have a slide in our West Plains publication that is like a sketch that shows the general thickness of that and the boundary between the two layers of that aquifer. It doesn't, I mean, and that's not drawn to scale, but if it's
No.
drawn just kind of as a
It's not like the
guide.
valley, or not like
no,
the.
no, it's not deep. It's more shallow but widespread.
Yep. The other question is that I haven't heard too much outside of the city of Spokane. There is the water districts. What is their participation? Because without water district, you don't have sewer, and sewer cannot build without water.
We initiated, again, a couple of years ago, when Rob Lindsay and Mike Hermanson were here, we initiated a review of the coordinated water system plan, which hasn't really been updated since 91 or 99. Amy Sumner, on our water manager now, is shepherding that project. The city is involved, the water districts are involved through the Water Utility Coordinating Committee. What we're doing in 25, 26 is updating the administrative side of that. Who's actually at the water districts, who's the contact, what's your current water right look like, your files and things like that. That will give us some information that will guide decisions on how we grow on the periphery, because all of these water districts touch most of these UGAs except for the cities in the middle. The city, through Marlene Feist at Public Works, is also participating. So we've got everybody at the table. We're updating that document, and we will incorporate what we learn in that in our climate resiliency session and also in our EIS as best we can in this early round. But it's being looked at for the first time in 30 years.
We've gotten pickle we're in. It's strong. And we assume the automobile will cover all of our transportation needs, and now we're seeming to believe that mass transit. I'm looking at all these respective urban reserve spots. I don't know how, I know that to get a plot extended in the city, a city council person conditioned my extension of the plat till I put in a park and ride. STA knows nothing about the park and ride. I mean, and my question is where does STA come in, mass transit, to these housing pods they're going to add to our urban growth area? Is it something that we don't even deal with, or I missed it?
I would say, in one way, you might have missed it because we had STA here a couple of meetings ago to talk about the North Division corridor and those areas.
In the core, I,
Well, those are the outside, the part that we're working with STA is outside of the city, is in the county-owned UGA or county-administered UGAs. We have a terrific planning partner in STA. We're in nearly constant contact with most of the things that we go through this. Their former planning director is now their CEO, and so that makes it even easier for us to bring them to the table in a meaningful way where they can make decisions and commitments. And importantly, they can know what we're thinking and start to plan accordingly. They plan in a little different horizon. It's a little more like retail. It's like, well, okay, there's a demand out here. Now we should think about running a line out here because we've got people to get on it. With Carl in place, we're able to say, this is going to be growing in 20 years. We know it's going to take you 10 to work through the grant and construction cycle. So get started now, and we will provide through the comprehensive plan of the county, an adopted policy document by the local government, that this is the intention we need to grow in, and for you and your funders have confidence that we're going to get there. And so we've talked about that in that North Division corridor. Yes, it comes up North Division, but then it goes over to that multi-care area. Well, that's the stepping stone up to the North Mead area if it ever goes in that direction. On the southwestern side, they already go to Cheney. So they go through the Four Lakes area, which could be a small residential center in the future. Right now, they're on the north side of I-90, but as we talk about this neighborhood stuff going, they can easily start routing a system through the southern side of I-90 and provide transit at the time these projects are happening. So I don't know of any place that has as good a relationship with their transit agency as we do. They're very much a part of what we're thinking.
and I guess my question is, if you need 100 points to be included in the UGA, are any of those 100 points tied to the SDA?
Right now, they're not, but that's not a bad idea. Yeah, the challenge would be, though, we would have to look at that and say, do we think this is a good candidate for transit?
Yeah.
And would STA sign off on that without, a formal action of their board? I mean, they have to report to their own civilian board as well.
They have power of it. Yeah, there's part of that.
I don't think so. STA? Okay.
That was that.
I mean, normally when you created organizations and called them authorities, you typically gave them that power. But I would have thought they would have simply used the local community to do that for them, but that's great. Well, if they had it, I don't think they would have given it up. But yeah, I've been in the area now, 14 years, 15 years. I haven't heard of STA exercising that authority for anything in that period of time. And for those maybe in the audience, eminent domain sounds like a very scary thing because it's condemning your property, but it's doing so at a market rate. It has to be appraised. It has to be agreed to. So there's some protections, and more importantly, we used to do this for urban redevelopment. If you've got the power to do that in your authority, and you can negotiate a different solution, but knowing that you've got the power to drop the club if you have to, you can oftentimes get a solution without having to go through the system. Yeah, that would be the advantage, is you could say, there will be future transit service right here, which means even without going into the complexities of a neighborhood zone, current zoning and direction from the legislature is to not have parking requirements for projects that are within a quarter of a mile of a transit stop, a major transit stop. So it's like, all right, there's going to be a transit station here. You can now use this other, 2/3 of your land that you would have had to set aside for a parking field for something else. Yeah. Anybody else online?
Logan? Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I
Timmy.
just wanted to say that I do think that the two bookends that we've set for the EIS make good sense to me. And that leaves us flexibility to find a preferred alternative, and I feel good about it. That's all I got.
Thank you. More comments from the commission?
I do agree with Logan. I don't know about the rest of the commission, but I think the bookends that you've got for us to work with and for you to work with makes sense for the draft EIS. And I do want to ask, is Spokane Public Schools participating with you? I mean, that whole together Spokane, that's pretty huge.
It is. Yes, we are meeting. We've had one meeting, we've got another one on the calendar. We meet with what they call the superintendent's group. So we have a chance quarterly or thereabouts to meet with all of the superintendents in one place at one time and talk about impacts on planning. So yeah, we've got that relationship in place. We haven't had anything one-on-one with Spokane schools themselves yet. We've had much more conversations with Meade and Cheney as they play a bigger role in our outside growth areas. But like I said, we've got a chance to get in front of the entire group of superintendents from time to time. And along that line, we're doing the same thing with the fire chiefs next week. All the districts in one place and say, here's what's going on in your corner of the world. So between updating the water plan, the fire districts, the school districts, we're bringing all of those special districts into the tent.
Yeah, public safety. I had been thinking about that too, because fire is a big issue in the Latah area, of course. But then, so parks and school, I mean, it was always difficult for me as a planner with the city to get a forecast out of the school district. It's like, okay, so how many kids are you expecting? How many families in your area? Because their kids are gonna grow up and then we gotta figure it out. So I'm really glad to hear that is going on, and sure that and you're getting together with the city, that Parks is also part of review that's gonna happen with the county's plan.
We haven't had any direct contact. I talk to Garrett from time to time, and he's doing a great job. We haven't had any direct contact because we don't really have any interface directly with them. It all goes through Doug Chase and the county parks department. But there are several county park projects that have city components to it. Upriver Drive, for example, over in the valley or close to the valley, similar. So we will keep that together. The last time we did is when we did the parks analysis, which was based on trying to figure out where we're deficient in parks. And we did the 3 miles by existing roads to do this. We had to include the city parks in that because if the city park is 2 blocks from property that's in the county, the people in the county don't care that it's a city park. It's just the closest available green space. So we needed to know where they were and how we could program them. But we will stay in touch, probably through Spencer and the planning team.
There were some issues with one of the Meade schools being outside the UGA and putting in a sewage treatment system.
Schools are one of the few exceptions to that. They're allowed to do that.
So schools, we don't need to, if we have a need for a school, it doesn't have to be in the UGA, but actual school itself.
That's correct. Meade has 3 schools in the northeast part of the area that are all on septic lagoons.
Any other questions? Commission? Before I close out the workshop, I want to just ask anyone who's sitting in this audience, if you have any comments about this workshop, I will welcome you, if you didn't fill out a yellow card, to come forward and speak. It's fine with us. This is an important matter. And I don't want anybody to feel like they didn't get an opportunity to voice their comments. So that would be a time to come forward if anyone has a burning desire to say something on the workshop.
And Mr. Chairman, if members of the audience think of things afterwards, the web address on the screen, Spokane County .gov/BP will lead you to the comp plan update button where you can leave comments and see how to contact us.
Thank you. We are, as commissioners, we represent the citizens. That's why we're setting up for volunteers. Question? Come down, please. It worked. We got someone to come down. Come on.
I live in Otis Orchards, and my question kind of piggybacks on to working with other agencies. You mentioned at the beginning about the aquifer, the Spokane Rafting Aquifer.
I'll go a little closer to.
Oh, sorry. The Spokane Rathdrum Aquifer. And I was just wondering, are we working with Kootenai County in regards to the usage of that aquifer? Because I just drove over to Coeur d'Alene and oh my God, has it changed? So they're experiencing an awful lot of growth over there, and especially on the Rathdrum Prairie. So when you use a number like 500,000 currently accessing the aquifer, how is that being impacted with what's going on with our neighbors? So that's my question.
We had some early conversations with Dave Callahan, my partner in Kootenai County, and he was very interested in having some joint planning efforts related to aquifer protection. We haven't followed up directly with that, but the door is open. We've introduced that in both sides. We've met a few times to talk about what we might talk about in the future. So it is on our horizon.
Good.
And it's, another thing with the Otis Orchards area and the TIF project that was recently announced as being extended. There is no plan in our work or Liberty Lake Sewer and Water District to bring sewer north of the river at this point. So we want to get back together and talk about how we can help Otis Orchards plan for a little more stable future. As we've mentioned before. But.
Me too. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
When you get done.
Well, I think Ms. McHugh wants to make another comment. We need to put you on the clock.
I don't think so.
Okay, great.
Two bits of information, since I used to run the Spokane Aquifer Joint Board Wellhead Protection Program. We started a joint Spokane and Idaho Rathdrum, the Spokane Valley Rathdrum Prairie Protection Consortium. And I do believe that the water purveyors are still, they may meet just once or twice a year, but I think that that's one good place to start. There's 22 purveyors here in Washington, and I think about a half a dozen over in Idaho, but they will know how many gallons they're pumping on any given day or any given year, and what the growth, massive growth is going to mean to them. And then the other is that at least in the northeast portion of the West Plains, which is kind of what you can see here to the west of the river, our wells on average, and I looked at all of them, are about 300 feet deep. The paleo channels are exception to that because you don't have to go as far to get to the water. But those are also the most susceptible to the contaminants that are coming from the airport and Fairchild. So that gives you, someone asked, what's the depth of the aquifer on the West Plains? And that'll tell you that that's how far we have to go. And it's going to be real difficult to mitigate the contamination that's coming from the airport.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Yep, okay.
Glad you had another comment.
I was just like to say, since I was involved 20 years ago, exactly where we're at today on the GMA, at the time, we didn't know what it was, but now we do. These are the same issues that we were talking about 20 years ago, and they haven't really gone away. And you know what? They haven't even changed color. They still look the same. And we have to continuously work at it and stay working with the process of trying to resolve it. Are we gonna have all the answers? Guarantee you, the next 20 years after us will be another one the same. Well, they talked about that before. So we need to stay focused on them. And I appreciate the environment. We had at that time, 20 years ago, we had CARA, which studied the aquifer. And I don't know if a lot of people know this, but you know how long it takes from the state line to come out the other side at the north side? For the aquifer, it takes over 5 years to move through the aquifer in the Spokane area. It is a very interesting, I can give a lot of ideas about how it works and so forth. And that I do agree, the aquifer is the most important thing. Without water, you don't have sewer, you don't have growth, you don't have it. So we have to be fully aware of that natural ability to work with it. So anyway, thank you for letting me say my 2 bits worth.
You saying they're gonna be around for the 2046?
No,
Plan?
no,
Okay, just know that as. You're pretty good at what you do, so I'm not gonna underestimate you, Clyde.
I know.
Anybody else want to chime in on the workshop? Logan, you've been awfully quiet. Are you still there?
I am indeed, but nothing else to add. Like I said, I think
Right,
that
thank you.
this seems really solid, and feel like staff is doing a great job.
I don't want to make you feel like you've been ignored, so very good.
I appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Next order is the minutes. So we have 2 sets of minutes here, one from October the 2nd and one from October the 16th. October the 16th was just barely 4 people there. We had a quorum. But let's take them in order. The chair will entertain. I assume everyone's had a chance to look at them. They're in front of you. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of October the 2nd. So moved by Pete. Do we have a second? Okay, all those in favor of adopting those minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstain? Yeah.
I was absent.
Okay, you weren't there for that one. Logan, were you there for the one October the 2nd? No,
I was. Aye.
aye. Okay, motion, those minutes are adopted. Thank you. I've already signed them. All right, good. Next is the October the 16th minutes. And 3 of us were here and Lonnie is not. He has a special excuse today. Chair will entertain a motion to approve those minutes. I suppose we can just adopt those. We were the quorum that was there. Is that okay, Scott?
You have a majority here today, so you can adopt those today.
Okay, all those in favor of adopting those minutes of October the 16th signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Abstain. And Logan will abstain.
Yep, I'll abstain. Thank you.
Thank you. Those minutes are hereby adopted. Thank you very much. Scott, I will turn it over to you for your staff report, please.
We will be brief, next couple of meetings before you. In the November meeting, we will have a little bit of a review of where we are today and what the DEIS is coming together and looking at. And then we're going to walk through a critical areas work session, much like we did with the climate in the October 16th session. So that's upcoming there in December. Depending on where things are going, we will ask you to look at the draft DIS. Should have been released on or about the time of your meeting. So you'll have a chance to look at that and make any early comments. And then time permitting, we will also add one of the other element discussions in place as a workshop. So that's what we have upcoming for the rest of your year.
Thank you. Any closing remarks from our commissioners? Anything you'd like to say? Now is a good time to say it. Pete?
Are we paid by the pound for reading it?
Yes,
Same as we're paid for everything else.
right, exactly right. If there's no other business come before us, I will entertain a motion to adjourn, and I hope that will be made by Mr. Logan. Copy reality.
So moved.
So moved by Logan. Is there another motion, a second to adjourn?
Second,
Second by Melissa. All those in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye.
aye.
All opposed, nay. We are hereby adjourned. It's 11:03. Thank you, everyone in the audience and staff. Thanks again to our great planners, and thank you, commissioners.
Have a good day, everyone.